So today I'm asking, why does Exercism suck? And probably more importantly, what are we doing to fix it? So I think the most important job of anyone that runs a product, runs a business, runs an organization is to know what's good, what's bad, to realistically be able to assess where that company, where that organization, where that product is doing a good job and where they're doing a really bad job. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about that with Exercism. I see every problem more than anyone else sees any problem, but I also see a huge amount of the really amazing work we do. It's amazing to see the tweets people put out there, the testimonials that mentors get. And so while this video is mainly going to be on where Exercism sucks, I do think I should start by saying Exercism is generally pretty awesome. We've had well over 1 million solutions submitted, hundreds of thousands of them have been mentored by a variety of amazing volunteers. And so I believe that we're really making a difference in people's lives. But there's a huge amount about Exercism that's far from perfect. And those are the things that I'm going to be talking about in this and talking about how we're fixing. So the number one problem with Exercism is the wait time for a mentor. You find a couple of hours in your day, you go in, you do the first solution, you get a good first pass at it, and then you have to wait. You submit it. Could take a day, it could take 5 days, might only take an hour, could take 3 months in some cases to get a response. That sort of variance, let alone the ridiculous lead times, that's bad. And so everything that we're focused on at the moment is about trying to improve that experience. Mentoring is absolutely at the heart of everything we do at Exercism, and that's not going to change. But we need to rethink things and rework things so that mentoring fits into the way people actually learn. It fits into that 3-hour window in a week where they can go and explore programming language in a bit more depth. So throughout this video, I'm going to be talking about V3. Now V3, to those in the know, will be very familiar, but to someone watching this for the first time, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So V3 is Exercism's version 3. The current Exercism is what we call V2, version 2, and that built on, you can guess it, V1, which was the original Exercism. So it's worth very quickly talking about what that journey has looked like, to be able to understand why we've got to where we've got to, and where we need to go next. So Exercism V1 was what I like to call a bucket of exercises. You could go in, choose a track, Ruby, JavaScript, Go, Rust, whatever, and you would just be presented with a load of exercises. You could choose one, you could solve it, you could submit it. When we designed V2, version 2 of Exercism, one of the big things we wanted to add was some structure. We envisaged having a core track of exercises that you'd work through, starting at the easiest and then working your way down to the hardest. Every time you completed an exercise on that journey, it would open up a load of side exercises, or what we rename them to later, practice exercises. This worked great conceptually, but one of the big problems we found was unless you had a really great set of core exercises that really taught things in the right order and in the right way, you could get very weird difficulty ramps. You get some tracks that would sort of start quite easily and then suddenly become vertical. You'd get other tracks where the first exercise was basically impenetrable. And this was a huge problem. And it's one of the things that's caused the really sporadic mentor response times. For exercises that are easy to mentor, so those tend to be ones with a small solution space. So a small amount of solutions that people typically submit. And just to be clear there, the code that people write is really varied. So even in TUFA, which is our most simple basic exercise, in most languages it's like 3 or 4 lines of code to solve. If you look at the most recent 500 attempts, at least 250 of them will be unique in that set. So when I say simple and sort of consistent, what I mean is the different approaches people are taking to solve it. There are probably only 4 different major approaches that someone takes to solve it in Ruby, for example, but they'll still find 250 ways of doing slightly different things in those 4 lines of code to achieve that, which blows my mind. So for an exercise like that, somebody can bash through a queue of 20, 30, 40, 50 of them in probably 30 seconds to a minute per exercise. You just have a lot of pre-canned notes, and then you work out which sets of notes to give each student, you drop them in, you hit go, conversation started, done. For complex exercises that have 50 or 60 lines of code, there's just a huge amount of different ways you can solve those exercises, and that's really problematic. So with an exercise like Bob, which is particularly problematic in every track we look at, there are so many different approaches that people take It's impossible just to write those pre-canned notes and copy and paste them. So it might take 15 minutes just to mentor one student. So the problem there is that you might start off with quite fast response times on a track. Say Ruby, for example, everyone starts with 2 foot. You might do that very quick. You get a response in 20 minutes, half an hour a lot of the time on the first exercise. But then when you move up to another exercise, there'll suddenly internally be a huge queue of solutions waiting for mentors who have got 15 minutes per exercise free, which is a lot of time to mentor those solutions. So one of the huge problems with Exercism right now is this variance in exercise and the variance in difficulty ramp and complexity of different exercises. So everything that we're doing in version 3 and V3 is about trying to solve that problem. Another parallel problem with this is the difference between learning and practicing. So Exercism is great for practicing. If you've got a bit of knowledge in a language and you want to develop your techniques, learn new techniques, explore new ideas, there are so many great exercises you can do. You can go and do that, practice, look at someone else's solution, get a bit of mentoring. It works really well. However, most people want to learn a language. They already know a couple of languages maybe, and they're looking to learn a third language. For that to work well, you really need to give someone structure, because giving them a whole new load of syntax they've not seen before, especially if the language is in a different paradigm, so it's maybe a functional language and you've come from an object-oriented background, or it's a slightly more esoteric language like maybe Prolog. In those situations, you need a learning ramp that teaches you these concepts as you go, not something which just gives you a problem and says, go Google and work out how to solve it. That works, but it's a lot more of a painful experience. So take the first problem around the variance in exercises and the different levels of solution space, how many solutions can be submitted, and add into that the fact that all of the existing Exercism exercises are great for practice, but not that great for learning. And you start to see why the experience can be quite inconsistent and at times quite frustrating. So how are we trying to fix that? Well, in V3, we're going to have two very different experiences, a learning experience and a practice experience. The learning experience is going to be comprised of totally new exercises. And we've got some guidelines for those exercises that are going to make them consistent, are going to make them predictable, and are going to give a really sensible learning ramp difficulty. So the key thing is that each of these learning exercises, or as we're calling them internally, concept exercises, are going to teach one concept, thus the name. A concept here is something like strings or basic integers, or maybe more complex stuff like how to do recursion in this language. Crucially, the concepts are about how to use that idea in that language. We're not teaching what strings are. We think people know that because they're already programmers. What we're teaching is how to use strings in a specific language. Are they objects, or are they just arrays of characters, or do they have methods? How do you iterate over them? These are the sorts of things we want to teach. Or for the recursion example, we might say, does this language have tail recursion optimization? If so, we might want to explain what that is, how you use it. If it doesn't have that, we might want to say that too. What we're trying to do is help people map existing knowledge they have about some concepts from a previous language they've learned, and map those onto the equivalent concepts in a different language, in a new programming language. And if they haven't come across that thing before, make sure we're giving them enough information that they can Google more about it or understand a little bit more. So it's about learning new concepts, mapping existing concepts onto a new programming language, and also understanding all of the existing knowledge you've got that's really irrelevant and maybe almost dangerous in this situation, and that you need to unlearn to become a good programmer in this new programming language. When a student completes one of these exercises, we sort of mark that concept as having been learnt internally. So we know the things that a student has been exposed to and that they've tried out. Based on what concept somebody's used, we then unlock more exercises. So every exercise has a set of prerequisite concepts that have to have been taught by a different exercise. That means that in each exercise, you're really only getting exposed to one new concept or paradigm or idea, which makes the learning nugget in each one of an equal sort of size. So as a rule of thumb, we're saying that any developer who's experienced in that language should be able to get through a concept exercise in 5 minutes. It should be a really simple problem to solve if you're familiar with the language. If you're not familiar with the language, which is who these concepts exercises are generally aimed at, Then it might take longer. It might take 5, 10, 15, 20, it might take half an hour to solve that exercise. But you'll only have one area that you're having to get your mind around. And in doing that, you'll also be practicing all the things that you've learnt in previous exercises. But you won't just be being given some sort of huge problem that might take all sorts of different paradigms and being asked to explore it. And to help with this, each exercise comes with a pre-canned introduction that explains a little bit about that concept. We'll introduce you to it. We're not going to teach you everything about it, but we want to give students enough of an idea that they can build a mental model, that they can work out how to Google for more around that concept if they want to know more. Now, once you've learnt one of these concepts, it's also really important that you get to practice them. So in a similar way to how V2 works, when you complete a concept exercise, you're also going to be unlocking practice exercises. Now those practice exercises will be all of the hundreds of exercises that already exist on Exercism today. But each of them will get tagged with the things that you need to have been exposed to solve that exercise. So you'll only be getting exercises unlocked at the right time, at a time that enables you to actually practice things that you've already learned. So that's the first major change as to how we're thinking about exercises within Exercism for V3. But there's another really significant change as well, and that's how mentoring and approval and all of those sorts of bits and pieces work. Because another way that Exercism at the moment can suck sometimes is if you really want to progress and your mentor won't let you. There's a lot of power in that mentor's hands to control your learning journey. Now, there's a reason for that, and a good reason, which is if you just keep bashing through each exercise, not learning anything as you go, by the time you get 5 or 6 exercises down the road, we're asking a mentor to try and teach and help with so much that it becomes overwhelming. So by assuring at each stage that a mentor is teaching or nudging someone in the right direction, we know that mentor number 6 down here won't be totally overwhelmed. So that approval process is really, really critical for V2. But it can also be really frustrating if you feel you've learnt enough and the mentor doesn't, or if you just get a bad mentor, which happens sometimes, who just won't let you continue when you really should be allowed to continue. And so one of the things that we're doing for V3 is to change how mentoring works. We're removing mentoring from the concept exercise part altogether. So you'll be able to work through all of the concept exercises in learning mode without having to wait for a mentor to give you feedback. So we're still going to be giving feedback, but this feedback's going to be powered by automated tools. I'm not going to go too much into this right now, but there's 2 sort of main areas of tools that we've got. One is an analyzer, which looks at the code you've written and looks for specific things that it thinks it can give you advice on. So if you're, using variables where you could use constants and the concept exercise is about constants, then we might pick up on that and say, hold on a sec, you need to change these variables to be constants. The other style of automated feedback comes from representers. Representers work because most people submit a solution that's identical to a solution someone else has submitted before. So on exercises like TOEFL, the ones that only have a few lines of code to solve, we almost never see a solution submitted that's not been submitted before. And we can take advantage of that, because if we give feedback to all of those solutions, then we can automatically apply that same feedback to future solutions. So by taking advantage of this, if you as a student submit a solution, and we've seen that before, we can automatically give you feedback. If you submit a solution and we've not seen it before, and the analyzer has no feedback to give you, we're just going to approve it and let you carry on. We're going to say that you getting the test to pass has been enough. But we're then going to pass that solution on to a mentor to give some feedback on. You'll still get that feedback, might come a day later still. That won't have mattered because you'll have still been allowed to continue. But that same feedback will then go to anyone in the future that posts the same solution as you. So we're taking advantage of the huge amount of solutions we have submitted, but also designing exercises to make that solution space small. By limiting the exercises and designing them in certain ways, we're able to ensure that there are only so many ways that someone is going to solve it. And so after a bit of time of writing these comments, it's likely that you'll always be getting feedback on your exercise if it's not an optimal solution. Moving back to the practice exercises, that's where mentoring is going to come into its own. So on the practice exercises, we're going to have more types of mentoring. We're going to let you ask for just code review. We're going to let you ask specific questions to mentors. And we're going to let you say, I'm stuck, I can't do this. Can you talk me through this? And we're going to start to build different ways that all of this sort of thing works. So that's how mentoring is changing a little bit. There's a lot more complexity that I'm not going to go into in this video, but that's the general idea. Concept exercises, practice exercises, learning mode that takes part of both of them, and also practice mode, where if you don't want those concept exercise bit, if you just want to practice, you can still just work on the practice exercises and request mentoring. Another way that Exercism sucks is that if you're a mentor that does loads and loads and loads, we've got people that have mentored thousands of people, you don't get any benefits at all compared to somebody that's not mentored anyone. You don't get to move up the queues faster. You don't get your own solutions mentored. You don't really even get that much recognition. We try and do bits and pieces. There's a Slack channel that people get engaged on. There's other things. But really, we don't do enough to, reward people who really contribute and help out in our community. And that's a massive problem. It's discouraging after a while. You might have helped thousands of people learn, and now you want to learn a new language, and you don't get anything back. So one of the things that we're doing to fix that is to build in a reputation and a credit system. So every time you help somebody, and there's a lot of different ways you can help somebody, but for now, maybe just imagine mentoring. So if you mentor someone, you're going to get a certain amount of credits for that. Those credits are things that you're allowed to spend. So when you want one of your solutions mentored, you can effectively put a bounty on it saying, I will give you 50 credits if you mentor this solution. And that allows you to move up the priority queue. Someone's more likely to mentor your solution if there's a higher bounty on there. Everyone signing up will get some credits, so everyone can start to learn. But those people that contribute more and more and more will be able to get help and probably get help from more experienced mentors, but also get help faster and quicker. So there becomes a tangible reward for those people that give back to the Exercism community, rather than just those people that take from the Exercism community. Now, the final way that I personally think Exercism sucks is that if I want to just play with a new language, I have to download so much stuff onto my computer to install that language, sometimes installing a whole IDE. I have to work out how to run my programs in that language. By the time I've spent an hour or two, and it really does take that long sometimes, doing all that, I've often lost all the time that I wanted to spend just learning the language. So one of the things that V3 is going to do is allow people to solve exercises in the browser. We've built a whole in-browser coding environment. We've got test runners. We've got all sorts of bits and pieces that work together to make that possible. Now, the CLI, the command line, is still awesome. I love that for a language that I'm good at. When I've got all of the tooling installed on my computer, when I feel comfortable in that environment, I think having the command line there and being able to work in my own environment and just submit stuff up, I think that's one of Exercism's best, most interesting, useful features. But if I just want to dip my toes into a new language, I just want to be able to go and try that in a nice environment where I don't have to worry about installing stuff or anything else. And so we're adding all of that into V3. So you can try exercises, you can submit your solutions, get feedback, do all of that without having to leave the browser. But as soon as you think, yeah, this is a language actually I really want to invest some time into, we're still going to recommend that you go and install it all on your computer and that you start using the command line to do it. Because that's probably still the best way you're going to learn a language, is to be immersed in that environment. So those are some of the key ways that I think Exercism sucks right now, and some of the ways that we're trying to fix it. V3 will come out later in 2020. I'm not quite sure of the date. There's a huge amount of work going into it from volunteer contributors, and a lot of it relies on those volunteers actually having the time, having the energy to go and help out. Things like this coronavirus epidemic, they don't help with that. I think most people are finding it pretty hard just to focus on things right now. There's a lot of stress and anxiety. So it might take a little bit longer than we had hoped, but that's what it is. If you want to help with V3 and you're not already, then please, there's an email I'll put on the screen. Please drop me an email. I'll help you get involved. It's fun. It's a nice community. You can look at the previous video I did on how to port a concept exercise. You'll see it's not actually that complex a thing to be involved in. So please do come and help out if you're not already. For those of you watching this that are helping and contributing, thank you. You're what makes Exercism work, and you're what will make V3 possible. Thanks for watching. If there are more ways that you think Exercism sucks, please feel free to tell me in the comments below. I know I might regret that, but you know, we want to make it the best possible place it can be. So all of your feedback is always welcome. Thank you.